It's official. How to Train Your Dragon is indeed getting a live-action readaptation. And even more so than that, the most recent news is the fact that Gerard Butler is back for this brand new How to Train Your Dragon. Yes, the main lead for the father of the main character is back again, just to be the father of the main character again. He's got the voice for it and apparently the face. And the very fact that obviously his character, Stoick, dies in the second one. Sorry, spoilers if you hadn't seen it. I was one of those people. Of course, that doesn't factor in here. It's a redo, being a live-action adaptation of what I presume is the very first book/movie. Because yes, that's right, in case you weren't aware of the news, Universal and DreamWorks are now going full steam ahead with a high-budget blockbuster version of How to Train Your Dragon. I guess with Jurassic World concluded and Fast and Furious stalling at the box office these days, they kinda need something like this. Pushing DreamWorks into this new live-action territory like an old Disney classic could very well be a future profitable plan, and that's the whole point. And now we have Gerard Butler reprising the same role he had in the original movies. We're usually all pressed about an actor taking over a voice actor's role. Now we've got it beautifully in reverse, and it's kind of like fan service, isn't it? This is a weirdly specific category because this isn't actually the first instance of a well-known, muscle-fueled action star reprising their iconic role for an iconic animated movie. Case in point, we have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson returning as Maui in a live-action Moana. This live-action phase really hasn't faded away from the world, has it? Now, whether that's because there's more of an attached element of contracting with the way Dwayne Johnson handles his movies, who knows, but it seems to be almost a trend at the minute. Although they're also already established actors and not only voice actors, so maybe that's, actors run the world, maybe. Regardless, that's a Disney live-action movie I am not so excited on. Not to mention them now dipping into their own animation catalog from literally just the past 10 years. It just reeks of desperation, you know? I mean, it makes sense, but still. But hey, if I'd spent a decade trying to make a Black Adam movie to the screen only for it to fail and end an entire cinematic universe, maybe I too would also go back to the movie that gave me an iconic song that raised a whole generation of kids, you know? That was my initial worry with DreamWorks heading into that direction. When I first heard that they're making live-action DreamWorks movies, I was a little dicey over the whole thing. Particularly with the moneybag CEOs of Illumination having oversight over the studio. However, then they announced that the original creative team behind Httyd LA, the director included, were returning to make the movie. Dean Blablois is going to be returning as writer, director, and producer on this, which just completely changes the game. As well as the original How to Train Your Dragon, Blablois' resume includes Lilo and Stitch, so he's definitely a guy to get excited about. Guess that's why Toothless and Stitch have a weirdly similar looking face. In case you hadn't noticed that before. This is wholeheartedly good news. In recent years, there is a clear steadying of the creative decisions at DreamWorks. Even with the missteps like Ruby Gillman, they've demonstrated that they're looking to be bolder in their choices in story and animation styles. I'd argue that between Shrek, Madagascar, and How to Train Your Dragon, they were all pretty diverse. However, there's no point that they hit a stagnant point during the 2010s. In fact, it's no surprise that they were eventually acquired by Universal in 2016. Whilst these kind of mergers typically make me feel sick for the industry, this potential Warner Brothers Paramount thing's terrifying. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime in the future. Having Universal's resources behind a live-action How to Train Your Dragon with both DreamWorks and the original director creatively leading it, it all actually gives me a lot of hope. I'm surprisingly hyped for this. I'd argue that this is the first notable non-Disney production doing this kind of live-action adaptation of an animated movie. Now, there's going to be many asterisks to that, but there's no previous examples that'll have the kind of Jurassic World level budget that this one's going to have. And I think this is a chance to show that an adaptation like this doesn't have to be as soulless and sausage machine as the Disney ones have now become. So far, at least, nothing has really indicated to me that they aren't putting all resources to making this project the biggest success that it can be. They've installed a creative team that have proved themselves to both know this franchise well and make truly excellent films out of it. I mean, this trilogy is one of the greatest productions DreamWorks has ever made. And this is also the sort of movie that can call for a live-action version. The epic scale and unique lore of this franchise is something that could be genuinely interesting to see in this form, you know? Shrek live-action? Interesting. don't think it would really work, you know? Whilst I have concerns about this other example, Netflix's live-action stab at Avatar: The Last Airbender gives me a vibe of the kind of direction that this project might go in, using the live-action form to add a layer of sincerity, whilst maintaining the vibe of the original. It's the good ending of doing a live-action redo. Let's just hope the creative team don't storm off on this one. Welcome to the halfway mark. Thank you for making it halfway through this video. Come subscribe if you haven't already, or share your thoughts on how you feel about this movie. I may know the news and the details and the production and the cast, but I don't know the general vibe of what people think. I'm getting a lot more on board with this movie the more I hear about it, but I was initially very hesitant. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below or on our Discord server. And let's get back to the details, shall we? My only concern at the moment is whether Gerard Butler's casting is an indicator that they are potentially keeping too close to the original movie. What Disney has walked into time and time again is the fact that there's no point in doing a live-action remake if you're basically doing the exact same movie. Not that they've cared in the case of Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, which made them a buttload of money despite the fact, but in recent years, this cookie-cutter tactic has started to bite back. If we're sticking to the cookie-cutter metaphor, they chewed on it so early and so back to the original that they got food poisoning and salmonella from the cookie dough. Sure. Pinocchio undoubtedly brought things to a whole new low, despite having the Forrest Gump team of Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis making it. Meanwhile, whilst Little Mermaid transpired to not be the mega flop that its initial box office performance suggested, it doesn't exactly reach the heights of the late 2010 releases either. They've also seen what happens when you remove the soul of the original movie as well, with the disaster that was the uber-serious, non-musical, nonsense Mulan. Not to mention it getting banned in China, where they're back on the movie making a lot of money. Universal and DreamWorks have an opportunity here to demonstrate that this is a Disney exclusive problem, and you can make a live-action inventive and distinctively different, whilst also still having a flair of fun. Hopefully this latest casting is purely for the fact that Gerard Butler would absolutely suit the tone of a live-action version, as opposed to making him beat for beat the same character with ridiculous prosthetics. Dear God, please don't pull a Hank Azaria Gargamel with this. It's gotta be fun, but also take itself seriously. Kind of the midpoint between Lord of the Rings and last year's Dungeons and Dragons. The silliness really worked for that movie, but I don't want How to Train Your Dragon to go that far, you know? The universe of the Dragon franchise is so rich in its own right that there is no need to make it self-aware and chock-a-block with Gen Z humor. The Hercules remake's already threatening us with the idea of a TikTok-influenced musical, which was bizarrely a choice of the Russo brothers who are producing it. We don't need any more of that, thank you. But I'm glad that there does seem to be a vision and concrete justification for this particular project. If they went out the gate with a live-action Boss Baby, you know, I wouldn't be so enthused. Though, if this does become successful, I do actually think we could be in the danger zone for that aforementioned live-action Shrek, which kinda scares me. Now that definitely doesn't feel like something we need. Puss in Boots set us up for a reinvention of the animated franchise, and with a 5th Shrek on the way, let's just stick to that, folks, you know? But I think How to Train Your Dragon really threads the needle on what would work for DreamWorks doing live action. And that's not even the end of it, as literally as I'm editing this video, now Nick Frost has come in, of all people, coming in to play the role of Gobber. I'm literally about to go on holiday for like 10 days. I'm still going to upload and handle things. I'm packed and ready to go in like 4 hours. And this news just keeps on expanding. But honestly, it's all the more good since these are some heavyweights into the cast that hopefully mean it's actually getting some care and attention. Gobber, by the way, is the friend to Stoick. He's the fun sort of uncle type character. So I guess that confirms that not all voice actors are coming back, even if I guess they physically can. But honestly, I think it matches incredibly well. And he has a really good balance of both seriousness and great comedy, so I think really it just works. Seeing him on the more serious side, I think could work really brilliantly for this show, just as much as the goofy vibe that Gobber generally brings. It's a great mix, I just think it's perfect. Kinda sounds like a fan casting, to be honest. But I guess as I hear more news, I sound more excited, and that's all you can really ask for. So who knows how stacked the cast is gonna end up by the time we actually reach the release date of June 13th, 2025. Oh. Whilst an initial fan favourite for Hiccup was Timothée Chalamet, which I would have preferred over making this yet another Tom Holland vehicle, the casting for the leads is refreshingly more up-and-coming. As Hiccup, we have Mason Thames, who blew up in 2022 with The Black Phone, a terrifying movie about dead children talking through a phone, which I shall avoid at all costs. Nonetheless, Thames was highly praised in the role, which tells me that they are genuinely going for the best person for the job, as opposed to blind star power. Joining him as Astrid, we have Nico Parker. Now, if you don't recognize the name, she actually played Joel's daughter in HBO's recent Last of Us series. And whilst we didn't get to see her in the role for very long, spoilers for those who don't know the Last of Us story, it was pretty apparent from the little screen time she had that she's a very gifted actor who can definitely deliver both the low-key moments and the raw emotion. In fact, you could argue that for the whole opening section of The Last of Us, she's the protagonist, until, very suddenly, she isn't very much anymore. And though I have seen all sorts of controversies about the fact that this is a Viking story, so everyone should be white and generally Scandinavian, it's also a fantasy world, folks. Any audience member can put themselves in the place of the protagonists and cast. I'm not gonna start a fight on this whole topic. But anyway, that's the initial casting for the upcoming live-action How to Train Your Dragon, which I'm guessing they will begin filming this year. The initial news of this kind of movie was out like a year or two ago, and I was not very interested or hopeful at all, but actually, the more I hear about it, the more I'm maybe on board. A bit of a weird underdog project, but maybe it could really be a spit in the face at Disney and all of their live-action problems. Who else would you like to see return or replace a role in this? You got any fan casting ideas? I'd be pretty happy to see some of the support cast such as David Tennant and Craig Ferguson pop up. They seem like a fit. Though at the same time, I always love a up-and-coming newcomer, made purely on talent rather than nepotism. TJ Miller, on the other hand, maybe we could leave that one out. We don't need to see that guy and stuff anymore. But anyway, on that note, I will end it off here. My name's been Daz. You didn't really care. Let me know your thoughts on this movie since it is upcoming. I'd be curious to hear the vibe of the general public. And I'll see you in a little bit.